We'll try and be quick and be respectful of your time. I'm joined by a great panel today from across the industry talking about cloud-powered streaming. There's a lot of buzzwords in the title, but we're going to try and cut through some of that noise. Cloud is not anything new. Today I really want to focus on what is and what isn't working. And we've kind of broken this conversation down into 4 or 5 kind of key themes in cloud-powered streaming and delivery. Cloud is clearly the kind of connective tissue, but cloud also brings a lot of complexity in the world of media. So to start, I'll say I'm Dak Dillon of NCS. We were formerly Newscast Studio. We rebranded about 2 weeks ago. And I'm joined here by Rob Collins, Carlos Hernandez, Tim Jackson, and Don Lahide, is that right?
Lahide.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Like I said, cloud is not new. And a big thing that we're seeing right now is kind of the cloud native versus cloud migrated workflows. So Rob, you've talked a lot about how Stars has been cloud native for a very long time, and that you've built a lot, made a lot of early architectural decisions, focused on building this ecosystem fully in-house.
That's correct. What we found, I was brought into Stars about 9 years ago for the direct-to-consumer launch. I'm on the technical side, and the things have changed quite a bit through there, but when we set out for DTC, even though the market wasn't nearly as mature as it is now, there wasn't really that much of a question. You know what I mean? When you go from that point where you've got the ABR packages and they're ready to go to consumers, everything lays out for let's do this with cloud. You've got your scale, you've got the touch points for the customer. There's you've got the different waves of usage and so forth that you can go up and down and so forth. So that was a fairly straightforward decision to make. And it's as things have progressed and we've been able to add new features or we've been able to improve our service, everything about that's really been a good cloud decision. There's other pieces to that story, but I will throw that with that piece.
Yeah, and then Carlos, coming from a major broadcaster with Telemundo, what were those biggest friction points in kind of thinking through cloud workflows for an organization like Telemundo?
Well, Telemundo is a fairly large organization. We're part of an even bigger, larger organization, NBC Universal. For us, I think this is a journey that's continuing to evolve. Definitely the decision of cloud native versus lifting and shifting components is something that we had to cross, and there are a lot of decisions that come into play into that. Speed versus economy, trying to keep costs low while having that agility. For Telemundo, we were really able to be pioneers in a lot of ways, moving into cloud fairly early with distributions with NBC and Universal, where one of the early innovations was having distribution come into our cloud and be able to download content, and that was a quick way to really start getting into that. But then after that, moving infrastructure and enabling things like disaster recovery. There's a lot of different considerations that have come into that journey and how we have evolved.
Yeah, and then Tim and Don, more on the kind of managed services side of things. What are those conversations that you're having with clients, as you're thinking about building these, kind of greenfield projects or taking over some of their cloud services for them?
Sure. So for us, it's a lot of a combination of the lift and shift that Carlos mentioned and launching people that are much more advanced in what they've done in the cloud already. So it's really a challenge because we've got customers that run all across the gamut with what their complexity is and what their ability to do some of these more advanced things is. So with some, they're ready to go, and it's a little bit easier, and with others, there's a lot more education and helping them understand what the best method is from maybe migrating from an on-prem hardware-based solution to something that's more fully embracing the cloud, and that then also enables them to do a whole lot more in the streaming and different distribution models.
And then Don?
Yeah, it's definitely very similar. A little bit of both, actually a lot of both. I think it's sitting down with the customer, looking at requirements, if they're willing to make changes, for things like VOD workflows, where you constantly are changing, you're constantly scaling up and down, you add a new provider, you need to distribute it. Cloud native makes sense. I need to deploy a new revision with a new feature, put it on a QC node, test it, send samples to the customer, throw 5% of the traffic on there and everything looks good, throw it all on there, right? Upgrade all the nodes. So that level of orchestration is critical there. We're doing a lot of live sports now that FAST is getting into live sports, always done a lot of live sports on-prem, but with FAST, it's definitely moving to the cloud. But same thing, if you're doing live sports and spinning things up and it's 1080p 60 HDR and I need to upconvert the ads this week and next week I don't need that, the microservices, billable microservices, all of that stuff is what you need, all that flexibility, the orchestration that, hey, these are the features that I need, give me the compute that I need to run those features. It's the only way to automate that. But for channel playout that's static, it's cheaper to do some of the lift and shift, and those things work well. They don't change very often, and hey, let's not reinvent the wheel for that.
You're stealing a future question. We're going to talk about playout in a second. I will say we're being good with the time here. The line between kind of cloud native and cloud migrated workflows, where are we headed? Is it to something even more compostable and modular, or where are we headed on this? And that's for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think it really depends on the need and the timing. So if you've got someone that has a large investment in on-prem hardware that hasn't fully been utilized, amortized, or gone outdated, then there's really no reason to go away from that. And there's also, of course, the concern about you really have to have a good management of your data, your metadata, your encoding, and how you manage what you have in the cloud. Because if that's done sloppily, it's going to be far more expensive, far more complex, and far more of a mess than just maintaining an on-prem solution. So for us and our programming partners, it really is very much a partnership in understanding the timing of that, whether it is appropriate to do that, and how to do that, because it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how you approach it, you have to be intentional. I mean, when you have the big vendors, they will give you as much rope as you want. I mean, you look at the numbers, it looks small, but then they add up fast, you know? And so they don't necessarily say, here's a workflow that's going to be most efficient for you. They will say, here's your storage, go ahead and use it. You're either gonna have to build up that capability in-house and look at it and say, what happens when we're storing this large file here? Do we need it now? Can we put it in cold storage? Should we just delete it? There's a real kind of, again, intentionality and plans of saying what makes sense for this workflow that we're going through right now.
Carlos?
Yeah, I have to agree with Tim. I think it's a balance, right? So especially if you have a lot of equipment that has been bought over time and has a lot of service life, you have to be able to balance any benefits you're getting from that with potentially building out some new capabilities in the cloud. It definitely is complicated. In our case, we're definitely in a bit of a hybrid environment where we've been able to lift and shift certain things that have given us immediate value. I can give you some examples of some of the great accomplishments we've had with moving post-production into the cloud. Like initially it was a disaster recovery play, right? We have a lot of production that happens in our facility. Being able to tap into talent regardless of where they are. I mean, we've had some situations with some productions now that we've got more actual posts in the cloud, where we've had content being uploaded from 11 different countries when editors in several other different countries, and being able to output content much faster at lower cost by leveraging some of those things that we can lift and shift. I think there's some areas where native services make a lot of sense in our digital ecosystem, where you need to be able to scale very rapidly at low cost, and where you want things to syndicate really quickly. Building native components makes a lot of sense. So having a balance of where you can leverage capital that you don't have to spend yet with economies of scale and scalability gives you a lot of flexibility.
I swear, as an industry, we're going to come up with a new term than lift and shift at some point.
Yes.
Migration.
Yes. So Don, you were kind of teeing this one up on distribution and play out. Are we at a point where we're seeing a lot more kind of manifest-based play out, and where we're seeing, especially with more fast, more personalization of feeds, where that's the way we're headed?
Hopefully. I don't think, we're seeing a fair amount of it. I mean, you are seeing the convergence. You look at, Comcast and Xfinity, there are Xumo manifest playout channels sitting right next to other channels. In the Scuddy committees, working on, hey, we're already distributing VOD to these places, and then we're processing the same content real time 12 times a year, 13 times a year for some of these channels. So, okay, can I send you the schedule? Can I send you the break data? And can we create this via the manifest? Because to me, that's the competition that we have, right? The Zumos, the people like that, they're frenemies. They're great. But you look at manifest-based playout, it's absolutely efficient. And even with the C-band consolidation, you're now seeing, hey, CDN distribution, and I'm sitting there. That's kind of a half step, right? I still got playout, I still have a broadcast encoder, and now I've got a segmenter, and then I'm using HLS, quasi-HLS, to push it across. And my receiver can do HEVC to H.264 transcode. Why can't I do manifest-based playout to that receiver and save a lot of money?
And I assume, Rob, on your side, as a premium content network, where you have a kind of a fixed schedule, you're able to consider something more like a manifest-based playout.
Yeah. I mean, it's, situation Stars was in was they had a running start with the being a cable channel for 30 years, and as things have progressed, our streaming has continued to go up. It's now more than 70% of our viewership and so forth. But it is, as we do that, but still the linear is a viable business, and we continue to work on that and go towards some of the newer technologies on that as well.
Yeah, so this has kind of been teed up, is that as more goes to the cloud, there's a creeping up of cost, especially if one particular vendor that has a 3-letter acronym. Got a couple laughs. Please, if you work for that company, do not message me later. So what about kind of the cloud sticker shock, and how is that kind of a balancing of agility and reality of those growing costs? For anybody who wants dare answer.
Yeah, I'll jump in again, because I think that for Don's company and our company, this is something where we can really help our customers understand the pitfalls and opportunities there, because there are both and they're extensive. And you really need experience with all types of programmers as to how that is going to be affected. You could have library content that is quite simple, or you could have things that have ads inserted in them, where you have to have a whole lot more understanding of what's going to happen with those with respect to markers. And then how are you going to use these assets to then stream to different providers? It used to be in the olden days, we'd put it up on C-band, it would come down to 2,000 places and you were done. But now there's that, but there's also another dozen very specifically curated distribution points to a lot of the streamers and MVPDs for a given programmer. So it's not something you can jump into, and as you teed it up with, Dak, if you're not careful, the streaming costs from the 3-letter acronym company can be ridiculous. Sorry, cloud costs.
And I think, working with vendors, finding the right partners, there's definitely cheaper. Like, I think we have to look across the industry, right? Across all the, don't look at just playout, don't look at just distribution. Look at it as where's the world's going. And when you sit and look at, a lot of the playout we do, we're doing plenty of cloud playout, dual region, not very expensive playout, because it can be CPU based. It's not digital video effects that you need double box ads for sports, right? Those are where you're competing with the AI guys for GPU in the cloud, and it gets really hairy really fast. But the idea of being able to do cloud playout on low cost CPU is there. The idea of being able to do spin up an alt channel. We're seeing a lot of that happening in the industry. Is I've got this 2-hour programming block that I don't have digital rights to, but I want to create a fast channel. Can you do this for 2 hours? Well, there are technologies that say spin it up for 2 hours, play it out, turn it off, splice it in, in the transport stream domain, or if you're in the HLS domain, it just works, So we got to start to look at those things that really start to, you can be efficient in the cloud. And we've really pushed vendors, and, not using some of the three-letter acronym company, we're actually pushing them to certify it against CPUs and memory, because we're using clouds that can literally, if I want 5 cores, I can have 5 cores. I don't need to jump from 4 to 8, which makes it very efficient. And getting your vendors to certify, here's the features that I need against here's the actual cores that I need, definitely helps too. That I crossed the 4 threshold, now I'm at 8.
So Carlos, from your side at Telemundo, how do you measure return on investment, when you're thinking about where to put your resources at?
Well, I think we definitely, especially when it comes to the cost behind that, you have to be very smart in how you utilize these cloud services. A lot of it is in the design of your architecture, being able to spin things down when you're not using them, trying to develop a situation where those resources can be spread across many groups. So then you look at the use case, the costs and the benefits. In a lot of cases, you're offsetting a lot of infrastructure that you would have used, right? And so it becomes kind of this capital versus OpEx consideration. So a lot of that goes into it. In some cases we've seen that it's very cost effective, but if you're basically letting things run and not keeping tabs of how you're utilizing resources, you can easily get into a situation where expenses get out of control. The other thing that we look at is that sometimes you have to change workflows, right? And that's a lot of it, right? When we look at how certain things were done before on-premise versus how you can do them in the cloud, it does require a little bit of a cultural shift in some cases, and you have to kind of get operations behind that, change the workflows, and then monitor that very closely.
And then Rob, at Stars, does owning your entire tech stack give you more control over how you're implementing those resources?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's kind of a virtuous circle there where, building that stuff ourselves, going through the evolutions of cloud as it matured, we would get a lot of information about that. We would, the internal teams, we built out internal teams that some of them may have had the experience of like the on-prem and so forth, but there are also people who were that kind of cloud native, but the ones, that was the goal. So then being able to track those resources, being able to put the workflows and the kind of techniques in, not only like, for instance, let's just talk about where we're tracking or tracking usage over the course of a day. Then there's a fairly consistent pattern until we get to a certain point. But then instead of saying, hey, that point where we have a premiere where we're at the very top, let's not design to that. Let's design to the lower pieces so that we can service the spikes, but also be efficient when it's not spiking.
So then for the full group for this section, we saw the race to the cloud in a lot of things. Now we've also seen kind of the starting to readdress what's the right balance of cloud, right? Because again, the cost rose. So where is that kind of recalibration?
I think some of the technologies are interesting for hybrid now, because one of the drives to the cloud was, in the old days, hey, I'm 1080i, I think I want to be 1080p 60, I think I want to do HDR, you're buying all this hardware to support that you don't know when that transition is going to happen. Time, cost of money comes into effect, but you're now seeing cloud native that work in these hybrid environments that I can deploy, I can then add a node when that needs to happen, and then reallocate services across the new CPU. It's not, I've got to go pre-buy all the compute I need now for something that may happen, or I got to replace all the compute when it does happen. You really start to have some flexibility. So you can start to have those conversations, but it is saying, hey, let's get into cloud native playout systems that can work in a hybrid environment and don't care where they're deployed, and then that really becomes quite efficient.
And for us, where we have third-party customers, it really gives you that flexibility of not having to invest a lot of CapEx up front and expect it to be fully recovered and expect it to still be useful at the end of its life. There's just an awful lot of operational and technological flexibility you have if you can manage it properly. Now a lot of hardware vendors are also going to software as a service stuff on a random box, which is one way to approach that as well. But still, having the ability to operate in an OpEx environment and not really have anything go outdated on you is a big advantage.
I say we could probably have a whole hour-long discussion on CapEx versus OpEx.
Exactly, yep.
But again, the drinks are just right outside those doors.
Yep.
So let's shift to kind of personalization, engagement, and data. That's another part of content delivery, is making sure the viewers are sticking around, right? So Rob, how are you thinking about real-time analytics and kind of the behavioral data, and how's that changed how you've kind of built your recommendation systems?
So that's sort of a ongoing thing for us. I mean, fairly early on, we built the recommender systems. I mean, that's kind of table stakes for this kind of thing. But because of various reasons, I mean, we've kind of built our data capture and our analytics in parallel. Like we own all the data. We've gotten a very robust kind of back-end analytics system. And then at the same time, we have plenty of data that we get on our users that's kind of a one-way, push it there, gets processed. I mean, in recommendations, that's kind of the fastest case, in that there's, you've got something churning back, but still it's not really real-time kind of thing. Where as we've gotten more of those analytics and more of the things of saying, this is great, all these things we know about the user and what we might be able to not just do recommendations, but understand their behavior and understand things that are happening simultaneously. Let's start to build out some of that infrastructure. And especially, I mean, the tooling in the cloud is getting better with some of the machine learning pieces and some of the the platforms that make that development at the edge a lot more effective and so forth. So we're really going down that path now.
And then Carlos, Telemundo is unique in that you all target a lot of different platforms. So you're having to think about kind of putting content in all these different places and making it fit for those platforms. So how are you thinking about that and kind of the audience engagement journey?
Well, definitely that's true. And I think leveraging cloud services helps us get an immediacy and expediency that allows us to get content to many different platforms. At Telemundo, one of our big mission drivers is really doing a lot of live content in particular. And so being able to create clips of live highlights of a lot of this live content, getting it out to social, getting it out to on the main platforms, having the data to help drive any kind of DAI and then hyper localization. It's super important, right? Especially in the modern world where you're competing with so many different platforms. So this is an evolving journey at Telemundo. We're still learning, we're still experimenting, but definitely using a lot of the cloud services and a lot of what AI is bringing to help create some of that metadata that powers some of these algorithms, and it's really important.
I think, Dak, you have an AI jar, right?
I say we made it 30 minutes without saying
I'm glad to be the first one.
This was, Dak was saying this was going to be the one panel that did not use that term. So I guess you're buying drinks, Carlos.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about quality of user experience, right, how do you tie that back to user behavior, to churn, and to kind of platform trust?
Well, I think, again, it's a lot goes into the user engagement, right? So definitely we see that when you're able to turn out content quickly, a lot of that we do with immediate publishing right after an event, that helps keep people connected. That's something that we've seen, which again is part of what leads us to do more and more live content. I think in 2026, we're going to have about 70% of the content that's going to be on Telemundo is going to be live. That's about 5,000 hours of programming, including on our FAST channels. So this also helps drive that engagement. People who consume live content are generally more engaged.
So a previous panel, just right before us, was talking a lot about latency, and I did want to hit on it just briefly. How fast are platforms able to now to respond with latency and the issues that causes, and where are we kind of in that feedback loop, if that makes sense?
I think latency has always been a challenge, right? Especially, again, going back to the live theme, right? One of the things that we've always tried to measure is like how can we reduce that latency, get it as low as possible, so that if you're competing with, especially with others that may have that same game on, you want to be the first one to say goal, right? Before anybody else does. So that's something that we work with partners, right, to evaluate different solutions and different players, and it's an ongoing thing that we always look at.
And then Tim and Don, as we transition from C-band and we move towards IP-based distribution, how do you think about latency different from that side?
Well, I think there's a level of control when you are doing non-live, so that let's just set that aside. And then for the live sports channels we do, when there's not a live event, they'll be in the cloud, but we'll pull them out and operate them in a regular linear environment with a production switcher and live real-time roll-in of ads and triggers, just because you need that control right now. You can't have that uncertainty or the question of whether your cloud latency is going to vary within that time period. So it's still evolving and it's still a thing. I mean, for me as a viewer, the one thing that I don't want to have is the gap between my phone dings with there is a touchdown and on the screen the other team still has the ball, and that's the case, and it's annoying. So we try and work with instances in our customer base where that concern is alleviated. But for us, it's a lot of it is regular linear programming content, so the latency issue isn't that big.
Yeah, and same for us. I think it's very much, we constantly are pushing our vendors. I need lower latency codecs. I need, you get into, your cost, your cloud cost in some instances. You look at things like JPEG XS. It's awesome on latency. It's very efficient, but hey, it's 400 megabits. That's not something you're pushing out of the cloud for an affordable price. So you really start to look at HEVC, low latency, and that's improving. Starting to consolidate that. I think one of the things we think about and are trying to integrate is, and it's tough but trying to push some of these playout vendors because they're doing an encode. Can we get them to do the ABR encode? Because you're just constantly increasing latency when all of a sudden, I'm coming out at a 30 meg mes HEVC, sending it over to this other thing that's going to do the ABR stack, and then pushing it out through the origin. And then, the bottom line is the end latency. In my house, I'm an Apple TV person. My wife's a Roku. We have the same streaming service, and I'm 4 seconds ahead, always. And she always yells at me because I'll scream, and we refuse to watch certain sports together. So, I mean, that's inside the same house, same service, just two different devices.
Is that a fight caused by latency? That has to be a first.
I'm an Apple TV, so I'm okay.
I'm an Apple
faster.
TV person too,
I'm faster.
Yeah. So thinking about actual kind of platform diversification, FAST last year was kind of a very bubbly or buzzy thing that everyone wanted to talk about, right? So where is it opening up new monetization opportunities on the distribution side, or have we kind of hit peak saturation? Now we're thinking about other things beyond FAST.
FAST. I think one thing has to happen with FAST is some of these recommendation engines. 700 channels on this FAST platform. How do you go find it? I've always laughed. In the old cable industry, the favorites button was a great idea and a worst idea ever, because my favorites on Sunday afternoon when 4 football games are on are not my same favorites on Wednesday night.
That's why DirecTV did the sports mix.
Exactly. But you really do have to start to look at there is saturation of FAST channels. You see the stats that how many are actually driving most of the viewership. But I do see, again, getting back to manifest play out and some of the things that we're looking at there is, what is that personalization? People have long heralded the death of linear, but, I look at iTunes, the great savior of the music industry, and people have stopped creating their own playlists, and now they subscribe to Google, Apple, or Amazon Music because they want a curated experience. They're multitasking. They don't want to have to make all these decisions. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for personalization and, getting true, personalization into the video industry that doesn't exist.
So, how does the infrastructure of the streaming world kind of need to adapt? Because one show might be on Peacock, it might be on YouTube, it might be on over the air with all these different specs and formats and ways in which people are engaging with it.
Well, we have to deal with it now, so whether they're all going to come together and that will be standardized into one format, I'm not too hopeful that's going to happen. But what Don was saying, if you can get the playout engine to adapt to all of these and simplify the workflow, that's a great way to do it. Because right now everything is very specifically curated, customized, and adapted to whoever the taker is and what their specific requirements are. Yeah. But that's something we can do and we do every day. But simplifying that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back and use a buzzword from a few years ago. But, we were doing some work around some of the blockchain stuff, is microtransactions, blockchain, why do I need to control, why do I have to learn 5 apps and how they do things, or 8 apps and how they do things? But can you start to get people to work together and really think about the technologies and, microtransactions, say, hey, if I want to watch Stranger Things from Netflix gets paid for me to watch it, but do I have to be in 5, 7, 8 different apps in order for that to happen?
There's had a colleague just before this talking about the going back to the bundling kind of paradigm. The technical piece of that, I mean, this question is the same. Is like, okay, if we decide to bundle, and this is a very natural kind of move for Starz. It started as a premium cable channel. We're on. Think of all the big Prime Video, Apple TV. We're there. But it's like, who's going to control that? Who's going to standardize and so forth? I mean, we integrate at different pieces where we will send MES files. We'll send to our partners, receive those kind of things. Will we get to a spot where it's like that bundle nirvana, but also the technology is agreed upon as well?
And then Carlos, you've talked a lot about Telemundo and Live. We've heard with cloud that maybe cloud's not right for live, right? But of course it is in some instances. So where are you seeing the cloud infrastructure is right for live?
Well, we do a lot of live already in the cloud. So so it's not something that is unproven. We've launched fast channels. Speaking about fast channels, our fast channels, many of them include live programming, right? Breaking news. We have a Noticias Telemundo Ahora, for example, which is launched, and that has both pre-taped and live content all the time. In August, actually, we're launching a new sports-based fast channel to Telemundo Deportes Ahora, and that's going to have streaming games, pre-taped content, and and that's all going to be streaming and play out in the cloud. So I don't think that's something that we need to prove. It's already been proven. It works. I think the cost models are manageable, right? Typically, we're seeing pretty stable costs there, and we know what that cost would be in cloud versus, say, doing that in a traditional broadcast setting. So I think that there's different areas where I think we do see challenges. Some of what we were just talking about with fast becoming saturated. But I think we've already seen that, right? With content as it's evolved. There've always been a million different platforms. I think fast channels will also evolve, right? And discoverability should become easier, and there may be more hyper personalization. A lot of these things will happen to fast channels. The way they are today, I think will not be how they may be in a year from now. They're going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, fast is the new cable. It's just now it's going to continue to get some of the feature parity with cable, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went fast. We've covered a lot of range, which means we get to have the AI section because we have time for it. So the one and only AI question for the panel: what's one real-world use case where you're actually seeing AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, actually moving the needle, and it's being worthwhile for you today?
We've been doing some metadata summarization. I'd say that's the clearest win. That's the one that it can say a lot of complications and things like that. It just kind of works.
Yeah.
There are many more that don't just kind of work, but we'll just leave it at that one.
Starz isn't in generative AI yet?
Same here. I think the low-hanging fruit was in generating metadata, descriptive metadata, language doing translations, creating captions, right, is something that we've been doing for a while with automated ASR. I mean, it's not Gen AI, but the Gen AI comes in and taking that caption data and then being able to do the translations and summaries and many of those things. And we've seen some amazing efficiencies there.
Yeah, I think similar captions is definitely probably the biggest one. Both live has gotten to the point where you can do pretty good with live, and then on the VOD, and then the transcodes and translations is definitely very interesting. I think we're starting to see, as content starts to move into fast channels and want that more broadcast look, finding the ad breaks instead of that I cut it off mid-sentence, starting to see some real gains in things like that where you can do that. Some personalized promo stuff. If you're in a digital world, there's some good gains in, can I take a 30-minute show and create more of a personalized promo if you know the user's behavior, who you're trying to target.
And Tim?
Yeah, well, on the tech ops side, we've been using tools that allow us to troubleshoot a lot easier and, be able to monitor and manage thousands of incoming and outgoing feeds with fewer people. But the advancements in what we've seen there that are powered more by AI to look at not just whether the video goes black or the audio goes silent, but is the video behaving differently than it is supposed to behave? Is the audio behaving differently than it's supposed to behave? Which is really helping with efficiencies. So we're using that for kind of our own internal efficiencies and cost savings, but then also with our programming partners, what everyone else has spoken about as to how you can simplify and move things along quicker and
I know,
faster.
QC and monitoring is not a sexy topic, but in reality, that's what I expected someone would say, because I mean, it's a natural evolution of where AI can go, right? So it can make sure that what you're putting out is a quality product.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit outside broadcast and so forth, but managing development teams, there's definitely clear wins for
Yeah.
like co-pilots and
Recompiling.
yeah, and just the capabilities continue to evolve very fast, and you have to have developers who know the domain, but a lot of the grunt work and the just even debugging, there's clear gains.
So it can basically speed up time to live.
Absolutely.
And I would say, obviously the exception-based monitoring and reporting, I don't consider that AI. It is in some ways, but it's been around so long.
Machine learning.
But I think where it becomes interesting and where we're starting to try and work on is, the exceptions, right? There, the movie, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, but at the end they jump through the window pane and it goes freeze frame. And it just stays there. And every alarm goes off. And you got to have notes in the playlist to tell the operator not to freak out. It's not really a frozen frame. We should be able to...
Or The Sopranos cutting to black.
Yeah. Yeah, we should be able to start to automate that and take that out of the, hey, why is the alarm going off? If you know it, why is the alarm going off? And so some of that feedback and the metadata around that is becoming interesting to start to look at and analyze.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground quickly. Before you all go have your drinks, did you have any questions for the panel today? If you do, we have, yes?
Yeah, so you spoke a lot about the costs of the acronym we will not speak to.
A web service.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I know we were trying not to say AI too much, but I do have a question just about the cost of enterprise AI. We're seeing that it's upwards depending on the size of your company. That an enterprise ChatGPT license is north of $250,000. And I know you mentioned that you're kind of using ASR and kind of different kind of hybrid approaches. But do you feel, gentlemen, as in terms of like when you're looking at the cost of an enterprise license, that there's the ROI on it yet for your businesses or not yet? So that's something we're navigating.
It's a great question.
Well, I think enterprise licenses are a little tricky because it depends, right? Especially talking about things like Copilot. I know it has a pretty heavy expense per user, and it's something that we've had pilots within our company, and generally speaking, the user feedback is super high. Like me personally, I use it every day. It helps me in a lot of ways, taking notes, rewriting emails. I mean, I use it in a variety of ways. Now, if you look at that across the enterprise, right, trying to justify, how much is that productivity worth? That's the discussion people have, right? I wouldn't be able to answer that. That's not my department, but.
And it just having the observation of that we're in such a mixed environment now of people who like use it every day. Like you get an email, you know where this email come from. But then there's people who wouldn't use it at gunpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that becomes tricky when you do the enterprise license of like you're going to have your super heavy users, and then you're going to have people who won't use it at all. So it's a tricky one.
It's very tricky.
Other
Yeah.
questions? Oh. Going once? Going twice? Well, thank you, panel, for being here today. Thank you all for being here today. This concludes the technology track for today. So now you all are free to go and enjoy your evening. And there's more Stream TV show tomorrow, so make sure to come back and have some fun. Thank you.